Okay. Is everybody ready? All right. Well, good evening. I will call the special meeting of the Federal Way City Council for November 2nd, 2015 to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Ade, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, welcome to our special city council meeting. We've got, this is a study session for our 2015-2016 biennial budget adjustment and also for the 2016 property tax rate. Our finance director, Ariwoola, will give a presentation. Then we'll have citizen comment for 3 minutes each, and then council discussion after that. All right, Ade.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. What I have before you today is just information on the amendment to the budget that you've already done. This is not a budget, a new budget process. It's just an amendment to the budget that you've already approved. Through this process, I'm hoping to focus on general fund and focus on the individual changes to the department and also review some of the major revenue projection and go over some of the major funds like Federal Way Community Center, Dumas Bay Center, Performing Arts and Event Center, Risk Management Fund, Health Insurance Fund, and a couple of other major funds. Also through this presentation, I'm hoping to answer some of the questions that maybe you will have, the council approved the 13 million interfund loan. How does this budget, the amendment that we're making, how will that affect, the ability of the city to fund that interfund loan? Also, where is the proposed budget compared to the council fund balance policy? You did approve a fund balance policy earlier, so I'm sure you will try to make sure that whatever budget we are proposing, we are in compliance with that. And to also show you what the major changes that we're proposing. And maybe to answer the question, if you think the fund balance is low, why is it low? Looking at the revenue, and I'll go over that in more detail later, we're proposing or amending the budget for 2015 and 16 by increasing our sales tax revenue by about 1.9 million. 1 million of that will be in 2015 based on what we've done, and 900,000 in 2016. Also, just to let you know, the property tax revenue is stable, so we will keep that as is. And our utility tax, we're expecting a decrease of about 1.4 million over 2015 and 2016. So I will also go over that. Going over the general fund first. This column is what we're requesting the changes for 2015. So we're asking a change of about 611,000 for 2015 and about 2.8 million for 2016. And those are the requests by the individual department. And again, I will go over the total. By approving these changes, I will also try to show you how that fall within the fund balance requirement that we have in our policy. This is the breakdown in terms of the changes to the revenue. The taxes, so we're increasing that by 1.1 million in 2015 and a little bit over 1 million in 2016. Our grant, which is the intergovernment, increasing our revenue by 22,000 in 2015 and 45,000 in 2016. Those are the grants that we are receiving. For the general fund, because of the lower reduction in the utility tax that I mentioned earlier, we're reducing what we hope to transfer into the general fund by 749,000 in 2015, and what we're transferring in 2016 by 1.8. The detail of what I shared with you earlier, these are the changes in general fund. For the council, increasing the 2015 budget by 26,000. That amount is pretty much the amount that we pay for the Puget Sound Council. And in 2015, we pretty much pay 2014 and 15. So that means we pay 2 years in 1 year. And that is why we need that additional funding. In the mayor's office, I think this is my, a number that I left out. It is in lieu of PERS that we pay for all of the city employees. So in lieu of PERS that we pay for all of the employees, but when we were doing the calculation, I just pull all the employees that we pay into PERS, now knowing that there's some that we're now paying into PERS for, that instead of PERS, we set it aside into a deferred comp. So that is what this is. It's not a new money. It is not anything special. It's just in lieu of the state retirement system. This is the graphic coordinator that will be funding, and we're paying for that position out of pretty much a 3 department, Mayor's Office, Park, Federal Way Community Center. And this is to cover some of the outreach program, the 25th anniversary events that we've done, and some of the payments that came in 2015 that we should have paid in 2014, but we didn't get the bill until 2015. This is for the new market and the payment to the chambers. For the economic development, these are pretty much just a housekeeping, the major part of it. For the branding initiative right here, what I'm doing is moving out of the 100,000 that is appropriated for this particular project. I'm thinking that if we're starting now, we will not be able to spend all of that 100,000 in 2015. So I'm moving some of it into 2016. If it turns out that I'm leaving 20,000 in 2015, that we have that to spend between now and the end of the year, I'm moving the 80,000 balance to 2016 to be spent. So it is not a reduction in appropriation, it's just transferring of the appropriation from one year to the other. In the community development, which is pretty much the human services, I think this is to increase their funding to what it was in 2014 and what the council approved for 2015 for it to continue in 2016. So that is pretty much what that is. And this is their own employee donation that they give to Human Services Agency. And the 50,000 is the homeless day shelter services that the council has already approved. So appropriating funding for it in 2015 and funding for it in 2016. This is also a house cleaning because the council approved this in 2015, but we didn't budget for it in 2016. So just appropriating funding for it in 2016. Outside legal services and the legal assistant increase because of the workload in the law, and what we've done, that is just amending their budget to accommodate pretty much what they've spent. Municipal court, making accommodation for pro tem pay, $7,000 in both 2015 and 2016, and termination pay for a couple of the employees that left in 2015 for $10,000, and increasing their witness and jury fee by $6,000 in both 2015 and 2016. And in police department, I think actually if you see the summary of the changes that I show when I say we're increasing our budget by about $2.8 million in 2016, more than 67% of it is due to the SCORE, King County Jail, and all of that, and that is where the major part of that is going. So the tuition reimbursement for the police, that is part of the agreement that we signed with the bargaining group. We're just trying to make sure we have appropriation for it. The Valleycom services, the outside jail services, the SCORE jail is just meeting our contractual obligations. And because of the prudence of the police department, because the way they stagger their hiring, so I think we are thinking that we'll be able to save actually way more than this. So they are reallocating some of their savings to other areas. And the funding for the police substation, I think which we have in the budget for 2015, but not in the 2016. And this is just a grant. We are the 26,000. It's just a grant. We get the revenue, and we have to show the spending at the bottom. And I think that is part of the items that I mentioned in the revenue side. And this is also the 18,000 is also a grant, and so is the motorcycle grant. Those are all grants. For the Parks and Recreation Department, the 80,000 and 131,000 are pretty much at the union settlement, and the additional park supervisor position is also part of what we need to do in order to make sure that appropriate employee is doing what is appropriate for them. And this is 1/3 of the graphic coordinator, the one that is also reflected in the mayor's office. So we have 1/3 of it in the mayor's office, 1/3 of it in park, and 1/3 of it in Federal Way Community Center. These are the requests that from the general fund, the support, the IT, the Comcast, I think, which used to be paid out of a different fund, but that needs to come out of the general fund. And, the car that was approved for the police department in order to equip them, I think other additional equipment, this is what is needed by IT to equip those vehicles. In terms of our transfers, I think I came to you earlier that we need to establish a separate fund for Performing Art and Event Center. So both for the construction and for the operation, so that we can monitor the operation just like we monitor the operation in the Federal Way Community Center. So what this is doing is just moving the money into that particular fund, so that again, just like we do with Dumas Bay, just like we do with Federal Way Community Center, Performing Arts Center can stand alone by itself too. And transfer out to strategic reserve. This is also an attempt to make sure that the policy that you've established in terms of how much we must have in each reserve, this is an attempt to make sure that we fund that reserve fund appropriately. This is a little bit more detail of the revenue, the sales tax, as I mentioned. We're increasing that by 1 million in 2015 and 900,000 in 2016. The criminal justice sales tax, because the general sales tax also affect the criminal justice sales tax as well. So we're proposing 150,000 in both 2015 and 2016. And as I mentioned earlier, that is the grant that we're hoping to get out of the police department, both the 26,000 in 2016 and 18,000 for the registered sex offender grant in 2015 and 2016, and the motorcycle grant, 4,000 in 2015. And this is the reduction in our utility tax. I think as we've reported in the monthly report to the council every month, our utility tax revenue is down because of the weather. The major part of our utility comes from electric, gas, and the sales in those areas are low because people are not using either the gas or electric for heating system. And these are portion of the money that are transferred in from traffic safety, to cover like Valicom and SCORE, because those are security of person related, and that is what that fund is set up to do. And at the end, this is a very critical thing that I would like to point out. The original budget that the council approved at the end of 2016 was with a fund balance of 9,080,656. What we have before you will be 9,057,054, just a change of $23,000 in the fund balance. So in terms of the fund balance, there's now really major change in terms of the fund balance of what you've approved before and what we are proposing to you. To go over the sales tax a little bit, breaking the sales tax down, there's some good information in this. The top chart is for the retail section of our sales tax revenue. When that is going up, that is suggesting that the consumer is spending, and that is good. So based on what we've done, these two items, I'm comparing as of the end of September of 2014 to the end of September 2016. So it looks like as of the end of September 2015, we've done better than we did in 2014. And that is part of what prompted my decision to say, well, yes, we should be able to increase our total revenue. So, and that is why I'm projecting that the 2015 and 2016 will be a little bit higher than we did in 2015. The same thing with the services section of the sales tax. So that also did, we're doing better than we did as of the end of September last year. Again, that prompted the reason that by the end of the year, we will also do better in total. This really tells a great deal of story. This is the construction portion of our sales tax. That means we're doing really well in terms of construction. but it's a double-edged sword. Construction is something that probably will not happen every year. So, but this is part of our revenue stream for 2015. So it's a good thing if we can realize that it is one time and maybe save it up. But meanwhile, it's a great source of revenue for the city. So looking at what we did in 2014 and where we are as of the end of September 2015, it's a great increase. And at least through the end of 2016, based on what we have on the board, I start thinking that we will do well on the construction side of the sales tax. The wholesale section of the sales tax, just a moderate gain as of the end of September. So, and that is why we're proposing just a moderate increase over 2014. This is our transportation and utility portion of the sales tax. It's the same story. We're doing way better than we did in 2014. And because of that, we are projecting a little bit higher than the 2014 number. The same thing with the information technology is really, really tiny. Actually, maybe what we've done as of the end of September 2015 is relatively the same as what we did in 2014. And that is, again, reason why our projection for 2015 is similar to what we did in 2014. Manufacturing, the same story. Government, coming out of recession, actually, government is now really doing very well. So as of the end of September this year, we're actually way lower than where we were as of the end of September in 2014. And again, that is part of why our projection for 2015 is a little bit lower than our projection, than actually what we did in 2014. Finance, insurance, real estate, the same story, and the same story for the other. Criminal justice is a little bit higher than what we did in 2014, and we're projecting for 2015 and 16 a little bit higher than 2014. Prop 1. Since Prop 1 is a portion of the utility tax, and that is part of why I emphasize this in the presentation. For 2014, this is what we did. And if we're comparing what we did as of the end of September 2014 and to the end of September 2015, what we have right here in the middle is what we've done. So Prop 1, as of the end of September last year, we've received a little bit over 2 million. This year, it's about 1.6 million as of the end of September. Again, Prop 1 being part of the utility tax, our total utility tax revenue is lower because of the weather. So, but the items or the staff that we support with this position still remain the same. So even though the revenue, and that is where to a great extent the policy that you made in terms of the fund balance, this is where it's actually really critical, because that fund balance is intended to be able to even out periods like this where the revenue will be low, so we'll be able to use that fund balance to absorb the shock pending the time that we're able to build it back up. The same thing, this is our property tax and REIT, so we're doing reasonably well. As of the end of September last year, we had 5.7 million. This year, we have 5.8. So we're really, really good. So we are projecting for 2015 just a little bit higher than what we did in 2014. Again, that decision is advised by looking at where we are in September of this year compared to where we were September of last year. Federal Way Community Center, looking at some of their revenue, the drop-in is doing reasonably well. The passes, because we changed the revenue structure, the revenue fees last year for 2015. To some degree, that is part of why we have the change in these passes, but other items, other part of the revenue is picking it up. Here's the fitness, 107 last year, 124 this year. Here's the rental, 166 last year, 184 already this year. And the other, which is slightly lower. And in total revenue, last year, as of the end of September, we had about 1.44, 438 million, and this year is already 1.44 million. So, but with what we are proposing, as of the end of 2015, we need to meet the $1.5 million in reserve. As part of the policy, if we were to go down on any reserve, if the council were to approve an appropriation that brings a fund balance below the policy, we have 3 years to make it up. So, and I think that is a good thing. So as of the end of 2015, we're making sure we will still be at that 1.5 million of required fund balance. And Dumas Bay is the same thing. The revenue is, seems to be going well, and the revenue, the expenditure is going, because we need to spend the money in order to provide the service that we do provide. Performing Arts Center, what we've done, especially with now that we're moving into construction stage, this is the construction fund of the Performing Arts Center. So with the construction starting this year, we are hoping, I'm saying that maybe, we'll spend about 2.8 million. So proposing to spend the rest in 2016 as we know it. So this is the fund that we have in the fund now. And we're hoping that for culture, CDBG, and the state grant, all of those, I'm proposing the appropriation for those in 2016. And that is when we expect them. The risk management, this is the fund that we use to do the insurance for the properties, for the, for the vehicles. And just an FYI, as of the end of 2014, in terms of revenue, the revenue for this fund is through charging other departments, mostly actually the police department, because that is where we have most of our vehicles. That is where most of the insurance coverage is. So, our health insurance fund is doing reasonably well compared to maybe where we would have been if we were not self-insured. Most of the excess of our revenue here that we were retaining probably would have been going to insurance company somewhere. So based on what we're proposing here, that the revenue will be about 4.4 and we'll spend about 3.7 million. Again, we're using these to build up our reserve. The reason why the reserve is critical in the health insurance, should the city decides to change someday, between the time that you change to move to another plan, all the items, all the events, all the medical bills from prior year until they're off the book will have to be paid out of this fund. Say, for example, in 2016, the council said, well, we don't want to do self-insurance anymore. If an employee is making a claim on some heart disease treatment or whatever that started in 2015, we will have to pay for it from this fund till that particular incident is off the book. So that is why it is critical to have an adequate fund balance in this fund. And also, the law requires that we must maintain certain level of, fund balance in it. So we're doing really well, and we're building that fund balance as we go along. Again, I just wanted to make sure that I'm able to identify to say, okay, this is what the policy says, this is where we are. As of the end of 2015, this is summary of the proposal. So the general fund, we're increasing the revenue by 423,000. We're increasing the spending by 611. So our fund balance will be about 11.22 million. And the same thing goes for all of this fund. The street will remain the same. Arterial street will remain the same. Utility tax, we're reducing the revenue because utility tax issue we're not generating. So we're also decreasing the amount that we transfer out of it to other funds, also in order not to totally deplete the fund. Solid waste, we're increasing that expense a little bit by 930. The special contract, reducing that by 107. And community center, increasing the revenue by 67 and increasing the expenditure by 83. Traffic safety, we're increasing that by the revenue by 650,000, and the amount that we spend, we're increasing that by 323. And REIT, the same thing, increasing the revenue by 1.2 and increasing the transfer out by about 400,000. Prop 1, which is part of the utility, we're reducing that as well because the revenue is going down. And the park, this is the operation fund for park. So we are moving this amount from the mayor's office into this operation of the Performing Arts Center. So the CDBG, that remains the same. Strategic reserve, we're increasing that. So, but the fund balance will still remain above what the council policy required that to be. Park reserve, that is a fund balance that the council established early this year. So again, I'm bringing this proposal to you, making sure that the policy that you just adopted, that is funded. So we're setting aside 250,000 into that park reserve. Remember, that was when we did the TOF, for one of our park field. And this is our debt service fund. This is our mostly our capital projects, and showing what we're putting and what we're the changes that we're proposing in most of them: the surface water, the internal service funds, and the changes that are happening. And at the end, the total fund balance at the end of 2015 will be 62 million. That is what we're proposing. This is the 2016 of the 2-year budget. So it's pretty much the same thing. And the general fund, as I pointed out, at the end of 2016, we will still be above 9 million. 9 million is the council's minimum fund balance. And all of these are reasonable. And as park reserve, again, in 2016, we're also transferring some fund to make sure that that fund balance the requirement that you insisted on your policy to make sure we get there. So in 2 years, we try to get there. This is the further breakdown of 2016, showing the changes in revenue and the changes in the expenditure. Okay. This section, I'm comparing what the policy says and what the proposed budget is doing. You know, the last column is the required fund balance. That is what our policy as of now dictates that we must have. So in the general fund, we must have a minimum of 9 million. So with this budget, it will be 9,057,000. Remember, the original budget that you approved was 9,083,000 or something like that. The street, the required amount is 500,000. We have 500,001. Arterial street, utility tax, hotel, motel, Federal Way Community Center, traffic safety, real estate and excise tax, utility tax Prop 1, strategic reserve. You know, we're spending this down a little bit in 2016, but again, based on our policy, we have 3 years. Whichever one is short, we have 3 years to make it up. This is our park reserve, it's 0.75 million. Our debt service, again, we have 3 years to make that up. Our capital project reserve, 480. We have more than 480. Surface water, Dumas Bay. You know, based on the budget that we've been presenting, or the monthly report, you know, again, Dumas Bay is one of the funds, again, that has been lagging behind. So again, this is an attempt to start building that up too. You know, it is not there. Actually, it was probably about 50,000. So this is an attempt. We have 3 years to build this up. So hopefully by 2017, we should be able to meet the fund balance requirement by the council. Again, based on the policy, we have 3 years to make that up. Our risk management, we're building that up as well. Our information system, these are internal service funds because they are self-supporting. They are self-supporting on their own, and whatever their revenue are able to support, that is what they will have. You know, we have the fleet and equipment, we have the building and furnishing, the health insurance, and the unemployment. So they're all doing reasonably well. So in total, this is what we should have, and we have more than $45 million. In conclusion, I do believe that the city has adequate fund balance for the interfund loan. You know, because the interfund loan is not intended to come from just one fund. It's intended to actually invest in ourselves. The money that we invest with the state to actually invest in ourselves and charge ourselves interest. The fund balance is funding expected project. You can say, well, why is the fund balance? We used to have 62 million and all of that. Our fund balance in capital projects were high. And they were high because we were saving up for some projects. So some of those projects, we're carrying them on. Some of those projects, we're doing them. That means we're spending that money for what we saved that money for. So that is part of why that is going down. The proposed budget is within the approved fund balance policy. There are a lot of them that have met the requirement. There are a couple of them that we still have 2 years, 1 year to meet that requirement. And that is important for us to keep an eye on. And I will be glad to answer any question that you may have.
Council, do you have any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Ade. We've got on here right now citizen comment. I actually don't see, I only see staff in the audience, but I should, just as a matter of course, ask, is there any public comment? All right. Seeing no response, let's move on to council discussion. Council, is there any comments, thoughts, suggestions on the budget? On the budget amendment, or adjustment, excuse me. I'm just gonna leave the floor open for a second, you guys, so you can look through your papers real quick. Oh, actually, while we do that, Sue, did you want to talk to the council about the letter from Judge Larson, just as a matter of courtesy to Judge Larson? Did everybody get the letter? Okay. All right.
I'm Sue White, I'm the court administrator, and Judge Larson wanted to be here tonight, but he was unable to attend. He has another meeting. But basically, he wanted to let you know, in addition to what was presented in the budget, he had a couple of requests because of the computer system that you approved for the court earlier this year. One of the things that we're looking at now that weren't anticipated is we're going to have workstations for both the public and the public defenders to be able to access the records online for the defendant. So the defendant can come in to the court and actually look up their cases online, and the public defenders and any other attorneys would also be using these computer stations to conduct their work during court, while they're in court. So he has $5,000 in there for these workstations and the computers. And for the computers, they're called Raspberry Pi, and they're very small computers. Originally, we thought we were going to have to use notebooks, and it looks like they can do this, and they're very inexpensive in comparison. And then he has another $10,000 in there for 2016 that would be for scanning, temporary help to do scanning to get the files into the system. So that's why he has this additional memo that he added today. So.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue? All right, thank you very much. Tell the judge we said hi, and we'll take a look at this. We'll talk with Ade, and we'll consider that moving forward. This is just the first of two, I believe, hearings on this. Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the money for the branding. So we're anticipating spending about $20,000 of it before the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. But if we don't, I will also be coming to the council probably before the end of March, so that if it turns out that out of that 20, if we spend 10, I'll be coming back to the council maybe in March to say, okay, we have $10,000 left to move it to 2016.
Great.
But as of now, that is what we're planning on.
Great. That was my question. Thank you.
I was saying for everybody to hear, we've got the whole 100 for for branding, so we're ready to go. Okay. Council, any other questions? Councilmember Martin Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Could you chat with me about it's on page 9, slide number 9, the funding for the police substation.
Yes.
I know that we got up a great deal on that in the beginning. I just
Yes.
kind of wanted you to tell me the history and how does that spell out to 42,000?
Yes, I think we got a good deal for the first 2 years. And after that, I think based on the agreement that the mayor signed in terms of lease, they start charging us, expecting us to lease it for that much. So, but yes, we did get a break for the first 2014 and 2015.
So that's $3,500 a month? Is that what it is, or what's the lease per month?
It's an annual
Oh, okay.
lease, and that amount is what the annual lease is. So we don't pay, it's just an annual lease. So hopefully I answer your question.
Councilmember Duclos and Councilmember Honda.
Yeah, just on page 9, where you talk about Valleycom services, in 2016, it was $163,000 and some odd dollars, and in 2015 and 2016, it's $539,000.
Yes.
Could you explain that a little bit? I might have missed that.
The 100 and, based on the monthly that we've been bringing to you, I think the cost of the Valleycom, even though I think as of the end of 2015, we finished contributing to the capital, to the debt for the construction. And based on their proposal, I think they're trying to make sure that when something happens to the building, to some degree, just like we're doing too, that they have some reserve to take care of leakage or whatever. That is part of, they're trying to build up their reserve, and that is why.
So they're making a capital reserve then?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Duclos, there's actually, trust me, when I saw this,
Sure,
I've been
I'm sure.
all over this. And as sitting on the board of Valleycom as well, I actually had our chief of police who sits on the operations board as well, as does Aday sits on the finance board. Chief, can you give us a little bit of, we've had some conversation, I asked you to look further into this number as well, and to work with Aday. Can you help the council with kind of explaining that number to a degree? Because it's not the full 500. There's actually, I'll let the chief explain.
Okay.
Sure. In 2014, our Valleycom dispatch service was around $1.7 something million. In 2015, it was increased by $163,000 to 1.9, and in 2016, our projected cost is going to be $2.3 million. And as the finance director was talking, that part of the budget, obviously we're one of the owner cities, so we're responsible for the maintenance of the building, technology, upgrades, and so forth. And there's also a wage increase for Valleycom employees, healthcare costs, negotiated salary increases for that group as well. So that's all contributed into it. So these costs reflect in part being underfunded for 15 and 16. So you add that in as well as, that's why it's seeing a big increase, because it was underfunded for 15 and 16.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that trust me, that leapt out at me when I first saw it. I've been all over these two gentlemen. All right. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. When the Weyerhaeuser property is sold, how much money are we expecting from that?
From which one?
The Weyerhaeuser property?
I do not know. I think it depends on how much it is sold for.
Of course.
Our REIT is 0.5%. So if it's sold for 100 million, we'll get 5% of that. Although out of the 0.5% that we get, we pay 10% to the county for the processing. But generally, we get 0.5% of whatever the sale is.
And we don't have that in account?
No, I do not.
So monies that come to us unexpectedly like that, or one-time monies, are there plans for that money, or what do you have in mind?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't do anything without speaking to the council, and we may suggest some things, but we're adopting a very conservative approach on this. One of the things we want to do is when we get a pocket of money, let's say, what would be the general ballpark that during the management retreat, we talked about some general numbers of what we'd expect to see. Could you give a ballpark of what we'd expect to see from Weyerhaeuser based on what we know the general value of the property?
Mayor
Just
Farrell?
Yeah.
I just ask a word of caution in that we do not have an amount of what, one, that the sale, when exactly that would occur, or two, exactly what that amount of, what that sale price may be for. So just a word of caution.
Right.
Right,
Just an
because-
estimate.
Because we, obviously they've got, we don't know whether the entire property would be sold, how much of it would be sold,
Right.
But I think the idea has been that whatever that amount is, that perhaps we hold on to that and then figure out, through a collective process. I think the presumptive thing that I've been talking with the chief and I and Aday have been to really hold on to that money and really be very careful if we get a big chunk of money. And then if we use it, because it is one-time money,
Right.
be very, very deliberate and careful about how that's spent.
I would think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So today, I think it was today, the King County Executive and the Seattle Mayor announced that they have a state of emergency for homelessness.
That's right.
And the King County Executive is asking for $2 million more for homelessness. I don't know if there's a plan, if he gets a $2 million, if there's a plan, but I'd really like to see us in line to, we have the day shelter going, but I really pushing for something for our youth. And if, children and youth were brought up quite often in this press release. So if we could perhaps be working with Auburn Youth Resources so that we have a plan and we could be asking for money and know what we need and what we're asking for, I think that would be really a good idea. And the Historical Society did ask for $10,000. I did read the memo from the Chief of Staff. I would disagree with that. I would like to give the Historical Society $10,000 in 2016. They provide a service for us that no one else is providing in the city, and it really isn't that much money for saving our history. So if we could possibly work that in, I'd really like to see that.
All right, thank you very much.
I would like to second that. Being in undergraduate school, a history major, I realize how important it is to know the history of the world, basically, and I think preserving Federal Way's history, especially the rich history about the logging, I think is just wonderful. So I concur with Councilmember Honda.
Okay. Council, any other, are we noting these suggestions? And I guess what we'll do moving forward is look for consensus on these items and make sure that they're brought back up with the subsequent hearing. Was there, Councilmember Honda?
With the additional hiring of I think a supervisor for the Parks Department, does that bring us up to our staffing levels before the recession?
John Hutton is, John, our Parks Director, John Hutton.
It does not bring us all the way back up to where we were before 2008, but it does restore a supervisor that we lost in the cutbacks in 2008. So it puts us in a better position. We're still down from those previous staffing levels, though.
By how many employees?
2 parks maintenance workers and a park planner, so 3.
Are there any plans to try to restore those positions?
Well, this is
I realize that, but
adjustment. I think we'll have to take a look at it.
okay.
How many people did we that were laid off several years ago? We shed quite a number of employees. I think, was it 70 or
It's 27
That's
positions,
27, sorry. So
22 FTEs, 27 positions with I believe it was 20 employees.
Okay. And then, and how many have we brought back since that time?
I don't have that number tonight, but
That would be interesting to get, to see what we've hired since the recession.
I know that we did that actually just recently. We shouldn't,
Okay.
I think that research has just recently been done.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burbidge?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the thorough presentation this evening. And related to the request from the Historical Society, they certainly do provide a valuable service to the city and to the community. But if we are going to be discussing a proposed increase, I would request that we be provided at the time that we'll be discussing that with a complete picture of the resources provided in an ongoing basis to the Historical Society and other funding that they have been provided in the last
Yes.
recent period of time, and also anticipated if there are applications pending, either with the Arts Commission or in any other source of funding.
Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. And along those lines, if we're going to go down that road at some point, and I guess we're diverging a little bit from the purpose of the meeting tonight, but in terms of the Historical Society, if we're going to be looking at their funding requests, I'd like to see if we could figure out a permanent relationship with them, a partnership where they don't have to request funding all the time and they're true partners, and we've got it, a line item in here for them on a regular basis. I'd like to explore that if possible. So I think they're, because they're so valuable to our community, I do believe. Thank you.
All right, council, any other comments or suggestions? Going once? I'm just kidding. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. Just to
You're quick enough, Mayor.
No, it's like, I had it in hand.
just to review a little bit, just as a reminder, what's the process moving forward in this budget review?
It's great, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Councilmember Moore. Chief? Okay, you just walk us through where we go from here.
We do have a published budget calendar, so we have several other sessions that are coming forward. I don't have that calendar in front of me today.
The public hearing will be opened on November 17th, or sorry, November 3rd? November 3rd. So at the meeting tomorrow night, the public hearing will be open. It'll be continued until November 17th. We'll have the first reading of the ordinance, and the second reading of the ordinance will be on December 1st.
Ade?
Yeah, and that is in the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. So the plan is tomorrow, I'm planning to go over the tax levy, and November 17, that is when the ordinance will come before the council for first reading. And December 4th is when it will come before the council for second reading. But it's item 6A of the tomorrow's agenda.
Okay. All right. Council, any other questions, comments, suggestions, good jokes? No, I'm just kidding. All right. I think that should conclude this hearing. Thank you very much for your participation and great questions. We are adjourned.